The following story has been brought to you by StoriesToInspire.org.
And I read this story in a newspaper called the Yated Ne'eman by Rabbi Yitzchak Hissinger tells the story. I think it's pretty cool. There's a rabbi in a school in Borough Park. He's still a rabbi in the school today. His name is Rabbi Steinberg. And Rabbi Steinberg he's a unique type of teacher, and he's pretty creative. And he also works in a camp in the Catskills in the summer. I don't know, 6 or 7 years ago, one summer, they took the camp to a trip, a boys' camp to the trip, and the trip didn't work out at all. They couldn't get, the rides weren't working, weren't open, and there's just a few other things went wrong. The boys are coming back to camp in a really bad mood. As he's driving back to camp, they passed by a prison, the Woodburn Correction Facility. He passes by the Woodburn Correction Facility. He has an idea. He says, you know what? They had such a bleak kind of day. Let me show them something unique. But to actually see a prison is cool. So he says, let me start driving. Tells the bus driver, turn up the road. Let's get a little closer to the prison. It's like a it's like a white collar type prison. Let me go get closer to it. He goes up the road. A sign says, do not go past this sign. He says, you know what? Let's go past the sign. He starts driving past the sign. Sure enough, they get stopped by a guard. Guard says, what are you doing? He says, I have these boys in the bus. I just want them to see some things, appreciate their life maybe, and see what it looks like, a prison. The guard says, you could go for 2 minutes and then you're done. They go 2 minutes up, they get out of the bus. And the rabbi now says to the students, you know what? There could be some Jews in this prison. So why don't we chant or start giving some strength to those Jews? So they start chanting, have strength, we're with you, we love you, we care about you, have strength, have emunah. The guard had enough. This is no joke. He tells them, get back in the bus, you guys gotta get out of here. They get on the bus, they open the windows, and they start singing songs about emunah. As they're singing the songs, they see a window open from one of the top rooms, and they see a little hand stick out, and someone's waving to them. And as they're singing the song and driving away, this hand keeps waving until the bus drives away. Good. This past year, remember last year was a long school year, so Rabbi Steinberg and his class, it wasn't the easiest year for his class, so towards the end of the year, someone says, I have an idea for you. So what's the idea? There's a Jewish person who became a Baal Teshuvah. Maybe have him come and talk to your class, Borough Park class. They probably never saw someone like that. Let them speak to this person who's a Baal Teshuvah. In comes the man who's totally religious, the beard, the whole thing, totally from the whole 9 yards. And he starts speaking to the class, and he says, let me tell you my story. I was in jail for 15 years. And, in fact, he says, at one point, I was in the Woodburn Correction Center. The rabbi says, Woodburn Correction Center? He says, I gotta tell you the story. Years ago, I actually took a bus full of boys up to that center, and we got stopped, and we were singing the song, and the whole thing. The man says, wait a second. I gotta tell you my story. I know it doesn't sound believable, but here's my story. He says, I was completely not religious at all. A bunch of years ago, one day I woke up and I said, one second, I'm gonna be leaving soon, and I have nothing. I was in the cafeteria, and there's chanting outside. And a guy in the cafeteria says, Jack, that sounds like Jews. It's probably for you. He says, I was getting a coffee. I didn't know what was going on. I went to my room, and I opened the window. And I also started sitting there, and I stuck out my hand and started waving. He says, and I sat that night, and I cried in bed the whole night. He says, I'm part of a nation. I'm part of a people. There are people out there that care about me. He says, the next day, the chaplain came in and said, put tefillin on my arm. He says, I started keeping Shabbat, and by the time I left prison, I was totally a religious Jew.
Enjoyed this story? Come again. Bring a friend. StoriesToInspire.org